Hello, my dear friends. If we say that Laozi was the founding sage of Daoism, then Zhuangzi was the one who truly gave shape and life to Taoist thought. Compared to Laozi's Tao Te Ching, Zhuangzi did not only speak of philosophy, he transformed those profound ideas into living stories, into parables and mythical tales, making them flow into the very heart of daily life. Because of this, people often say, Zhuangzi is the literature of philosophy and the philosophy of literature. Dear listeners, welcome to today's session. Remember, listening to a great book every day can nurture wisdom, sharpen your thinking, and elevate your life. Today, we will explore the classic Zhuangzi, also known as the Nanhua Jing. Although Zhuangzi lived more than 2,000 years ago, his spirit is strikingly modern. He said that the pursuit of life should aim toward three realms: a soul that is lively and interesting, a spirit that is free, a state that transcends material interests. If we reflect carefully, we will realize almost every challenge we face in life today can find its answer within the pages of Zhuangzi. Now, let us begin our journey into these three realms of life as Zhuangzi described them, and see how we can move toward a life of freedom and joy, the kind of carefree wandering that he envisioned. First, let us talk about a person with an interesting soul. There is a saying, external beauty comes in thousands of forms, but a truly interesting soul is one in 1,000 miles. This thought deeply reflects Zhuangzi's wisdom. For him, appearance is only the outer shell, it is not the essence. Zhuangzi even praised those who looked unusual or unattractive, but possessed an extraordinary inner spirit. In his writings, he described people who might have missing limbs, deformed bodies, or features that the world found unpleasant. Yet these very individuals shone with spiritual strength and profound influence. For example, in one of his stories, there was a man named Qi Li Shu. His appearance was so unusual that he seemed like a monster. His face grew below his navel, his shoulders rose above his head, the hair on his neck pointed straight toward the sky, and his thighs connected strangely to his ribs. To most people, he looked frightening. But Zhuangzi tells us, despite his grotesque form, Qi Li Shu possessed a spirit that could guide, inspire, and even bring peace to others. This, my friends, is the wisdom of Zhuangzi. He reminds us that the value of life is not in outward appearance, nor in material possession, but in the richness of the spirit, the soul that shines from within. Earlier, we spoke about Qi Li Shu, a man of strange and even frightening appearance who, despite his deformities, was able to support an entire family of more than 10 people, simply by working to separate grain from chaff. Far from being a burden, he became the breadwinner, the one who kept everyone alive. Zhuangzi gives us another story, this time about Ai Tai, a man so ugly that people were terrified at the mere sight of him. He had no wealth, no power, no noble background. And yet something extraordinary happened. Whether man or woman, anyone who spent time with him grew to love him deeply. Duke Ai of the state of Lu heard about this remarkable man and, out of curiosity, wanted to meet him. As expected, when the Duke finally spoke with Ai Tai, he too was completely won over. In fact, Duke Ai was so moved that he even felt willing to share his kingdom with this man. Now, here we see an important distinction. Qi Li Shu was able to sustain his family, but Ai Tai went beyond that. He had countless admirers. Both men bore heavy physical imperfections, yet both radiated spiritual brilliance. Zhuangzi tells these stories to show us that true human worth lies not in outward form, but in the invisible charm of the spirit. For Zhuangzi, spiritual attraction is far greater than physical beauty. He believed that only when we release our attachment to external appearance can we begin to nurture the inner light of the spirit. This insight echoes not only in ancient Chinese thought, but also in modern life. Take for instance the French novelist Marguerite Duras, author of The Lover, who won the prestigious Goncourt Prize. Duras lived by the very truths she wrote of transcending age, appearance, and the passage of time. When she was 66 years old, a young man named Andrea, only 27 at the time, fell deeply in love with her. Without hesitation, he told the aging, weathered woman, "Your face now, marked by time, makes me love you even more than when you were young." For the last 16 years of her life, Andrea stayed by her side, caring for her with devotion. Duras was a woman of immense passion and a profound inner freedom. People loved her not for her youth, not for her beauty, but for the strength of her spirit. Her allure rose above age, above appearance, above time itself. And so, when we return to Zhuangzi, we realize both Zhuangzi and Duras saw the same truth. The essence of a person lies not in the body, not in the face, but in the radiance of the soul. Laozi once said, "What is most real is often invisible." And Zhuangzi, through stories of Qi Li Shu and Aitai, gave life to this truth, reminding us that the spirit is what truly matters. Daoism teaches us that the true way Dao is natural and effortless. But when human beings cover themselves with layers of artificial masks, when they pretend, they lose that natural liveliness and charm. When we drop the mask, when we stop pretending, life suddenly becomes radiant again. What does it mean to be lively? It means to live without shackles, without rigidity, flowing with the rhythm of nature. And what does it mean to be interesting? It means to reveal one's true essence, to express genuine emotions, and to follow authentic passions. That is why a child and an old man collecting seashells can still speak with ease to one another, because there is no pretense between them. And where there is no pretense, everything becomes equal, natural, and deeply lovable. Daoism has always emphasized this, the return to one's true nature. But then comes the question, how do we live true to our own essence? The first step is to remove the inner obsession with fixed standards, standards imposed by society. People often ask, which field of study is hot right now? Which career brings the most money? Which industry guarantees security? Parents push their children toward these paths with all their effort. But the result? Many young people suffer through years of study, trapped in fields that bring them no joy and no vision of a future. Their youth is buried beneath standards that do not belong to them. Think about Harvard University. For many, it represents the pinnacle of education, the dream of a lifetime. And yet, when Mark Zuckerberg discovered his true passion, he left Harvard halfway and poured his energy into creating Facebook. Bill Gates did the same, leaving his studies behind to focus on Microsoft. At that time, many considered their decisions reckless, even foolish, but reality proved otherwise. Their courage to follow passion and inner freedom led them to reshape the world. Unlike those who followed society's rigid standards, they chose their own way. This tells us something powerful. The world does not have a single universal standard. Zhuangzi's philosophy of freedom insists that we must pursue the life of the lively and the interesting soul. This, he says, is a realm worth devoting one's life to. Zhuangzi himself offered many parables about the pursuit of freedom. He believed that only with inner freedom can one be truly alive and truly captivating. One such story comes from the chapter Zbei, the tale of the marsh. Zhuangzi spoke of the wild rooster. This bird does not eat polluted food. It does not drink dirty water. Instead, it soars freely through the sky. A wild bird may have to walk dozens of steps to find its food, and hundreds of steps to find clean water. Life is not easy for it. It struggles. It searches. And yet, even with all that hardship, the wild bird remains free. Through this story, Zhuangzi reminds us that the price of freedom may be effort, even difficulty. But in exchange, one lives a life that is genuine, vibrant, and unchained. In our last session, we spoke of the wild bird choosing hardship in freedom over ease in captivity. Remember, these birds would rather struggle to find food and water than live trapped in a cage, fed daily, but stripped of their freedom. If even birds understand this truth, then how much more so should we as human beings? For at the core of our very nature lies the longing for freedom. But here is the challenge. As children, we begin life with this innate desire for freedom. Yet little by little, the rules, norms, and expectations of society tighten around us. Education, traditions, and pressures slowly wrap us in invisible chains until we forget the natural freedom of our soul. True freedom of the spirit is never easy. Many people fall into the trap of comparison, constantly measuring themselves against others. They compare bodies, they compare wealth, they compare status, children, and possessions. And with comparison always comes disappointment. Worse still, comparison erodes our sense of direction. We no longer know what is truly ours and what belongs only to the expectations of others. Zhuangzi warned against this. In the story Chu Yao Tian Mo, he spoke of people whose appearances differed from the crowd. For him, difference in appearance is not frightening. On the contrary, it is part of the natural order. What is truly frightening, he said, is when the human mind is stuffed with society's standards, concepts of what is acceptable, what is beautiful, what is successful. When we fail to meet those standards, we feel shame and fear. When we meet them, we grow arrogant and self-satisfied. Either way, our spirit is trapped. So Zhuangzi challenges us with a question. Can you accept and even embrace your own uniqueness? This wisdom still echoes today. There was once a story in the news of a girl who began cosmetic surgery at the age of 14. Over time, She spent more than $500,000 US altering her appearance. She admitted cosmetic surgery had become an addiction. Whenever someone hinted that her face had even the smallest imperfection, she would run to the clinic again, desperate to carve herself into the image of perfection that others demanded. But think about it. To hand over your entire being to someone else's standard of beauty, what could be more cruel? In society, we often hear the phrase, "Compare yourself to others and anger will follow." This is the danger of living by a ruler drawn by society. What is beautiful? What is ugly? What is acceptable? These definitions are borrowed, manufactured, and imposed, and in following them blindly, people erase the uniqueness, the sacredness of their own existence. So how then do we break free from this endless comparison? How do we take back the steering wheel of our lives? The first step is to escape the measuring stick of others. Our inner being must be firm and steady. We must distinguish clearly what belongs to the inner self and what belongs to the outer world. We must realize that the true value of life is not in appearance, not in the recognition of others, but in living authentically with ourselves. Life in itself is already worthy of respect. Life in itself is already worthy of love, regardless of how we look, regardless of how others may judge. This is Zhuangzi's teaching. This is the spirit of true freedom. So far, we've explored Zhuangzi's vision of the lively soul and the free spirit. Now, let us take a step further toward the third realm, transcending material measures and living in harmony with the natural Tao. Daoism teaches, Tao follows what is natural. Only when human beings live according to their true, natural essence can they walk farther on the path of life. We need an enduring inner strength, a steady flame to carry us forward. And only when our soul is genuine, soaring after its own dreams, can we tap into an inexhaustible source of energy lifting us higher and farther, just like the giant bird described in Zhuangzi's carefree wandering. Think of Laozi, who withdrew from official life, or Zhuangzi himself, who hid away from society's stage, quietly writing his book. By worldly standards, they might have looked like failures, men who refused power, fame, and social recognition. But in truth, their inner world was steady, unshakable, and free. This freedom is beautifully expressed in Zhuangzi's words. When the whole world praises you, you do not need to feel heavier. When the whole world criticizes you, you do not need to feel lighter. What matters is to know the boundary between the inner and the outer, to understand the nature of honor and disgrace. In other words, if the entire world praises you, it doesn't mean you are necessarily right. And if the whole world condemns you, it doesn't mean you are wrong. What truly matters is whether your inner being stands firm and unwavering. But Zhuangzi pushes us even further. It is not enough to drop the world's measuring stick, we must also drop our own. This is even harder to do. When others judge us by their standards, we notice the weight immediately. But when we impose our own standards on others, we often fail to see that we are still bound. In the chapter Qi Wu Lun on equalizing things, Zhuangzi writes, Huai Gui Jue Guai, Dao Tong Wei Yi, meaning, all strange, abnormal, or different states are in fact connected and united within Tao. From the perspective of Tao, all differences are only on the surface. Seen from the lens of Tao, everything is the same. This is why, before Tao, all human beings are equal. Equal in essence, regardless of language, skin color, or nation. None of these differences truly matter. True greatness comes from viewing life from a broader, higher vantage point. Think about it. When you sit in an airplane as it rises into the sky, the houses, streets, and fields below grow smaller and smaller. From that height, all the walls that divide us, all the distinctions we cling to, lose their sharpness. What once looked vast and important on the ground becomes tiny, almost invisible. This is the perspective of Tao, a vast vision, free from narrow judgments, embracing the unity of all things. Earlier, we spoke of viewing life from above, like looking out of an airplane window. As the plane rises, the houses, the roads, the people below shrink into tiny dots and eventually disappear into nothingness. What remains is only the vastness of clouds and sky. From that vantage point, can we really still insist on what is big or small, high or low, right or wrong? This is what it means to look at life through the perspective of Tao, broad, expansive, and beyond narrow distinctions. Zhuangzi, in his famous chapter Qi Wu Lun, spoke of this truth, the unity and equality of all things. His philosophy is strikingly modern, even timeless. If we were to condense Zhuangzi's thought into one guiding principle, it would be this: transcend the endless distinctions between right and wrong, beauty and ugliness, life and death. Layer by layer, As we dissolve these divisions, we naturally learn to let go. We no longer impose society's yardsticks upon ourselves, nor our own yardsticks upon others. And in that freedom, compassion and understanding for the world arise naturally. Now, letting go of measurements in our heart does not mean doing nothing. Daoism is not passivity. Rather, it is about acting in harmony with the natural order of things, not forcing them against their nature. This truth is beautifully illustrated in Zhuangzi's most famous parable, the story of Kukding carving an ox. The story goes like this. Kukding was preparing an ox for King Hui of Liang. His movements were so skillful, so natural, that the king was astonished, praising his extraordinary technique. But Kukding humbly explained, "It is not skill alone. What I follow is the Tao of things themselves." He revealed that after many years, he no longer looked at the ox with his eyes, but allowed his spirit to move with the natural lines of the animal. Instead of hacking at obstacles with brute force, he glided through the natural spaces between the joints. 19 years had passed, yet his knife remained as sharp as if it were new. The ox, in this story, is more than just an animal. It is a metaphor for society itself, full of obstacles, complexities, and difficulties. The knife represents the way we engage with life. If we approach every challenge with force, with heaviness of heart, we only create resistance, damage, and exhaustion. But if we, like Kukding, move with sensitivity and attunement to the natural flow, we pass through life with ease. This is Zhuangzi's teaching. We must make our heart lighter, thinner, more refined, like a blade sharpened to subtlety. When the heart is burdened and heavy, it crashes into every obstacle. But when the heart is light and precise, it can navigate even the most tangled difficulties without harm. And when our mind has that sensitivity, that clarity, that effortless concentration, what challenge in life could we not overcome? So Zhuangzi asks us, can we live with a heart like Kukding's knife? Not heavy, not rigid, but light, precise, and in harmony with Tao. If so, we will find that even in the most complex situations, there is always a way, through gracefully, effortlessly, and without loss. When we talk about freedom in the philosophy of Zhuangzi, we are not only talking about freedom of the body, but freedom of the mind and spirit. Yet, on this path to inner freedom, countless obstacles appear before us. Beyond comparison, there is another great obstacle, is the obsession with utility, or what we call instrumental thinking. Take this simple example. Many students today, when choosing their field of study, ask only one question. Will this major be easy to graduate from? They rarely ask, do I truly love this subject? Does it align with the path of my own heart? What wisdom will I gain through this journey of study? Instead, their minds are consumed with anxiety about whether they can graduate quickly and conveniently. And in life, we repeat the same pattern. We work hard to earn money, buy a house, purchase a car, raise children. Then, when our children grow up, we urge them to do the same. Earn money, buy houses, buy cars, raise children. But have we ever stopped to think? Have we asked ourselves, will the challenges the next generation faces be the same as ours today? In Israel, there is a historian named Yuval Noah Harari, a professor at Oxford University. In his famous book Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow, he shares a striking idea. He predicts that in the future, only a small fraction of humanity will continue the next stage of biological evolution and become something like a new species, while the remaining 99% will be left behind, pushed out of what society considers necessary. For many readers, this was a devastating revelation. They felt crushed, as if life itself had lost meaning. Their sense of self-worth collapsed, because their value had been tied only to usefulness, only to whether society considered them necessary. But Zhuangzi offers us a profound solution to this dilemma, the wisdom of the great use of uselessness. In his writings, he tells the story of a tree. One day, his close friend Huizi pointed to a large tree and said, "Look at that tree, it is so ugly. Its trunk is crooked. It cannot be cut into beams for building. It cannot be shaped into furniture. Even the carpenter would not bother with it. Tell me, Zhuangzi, what good is this tree?" Huizi's view represents utilitarian thinking, valuing things only by their immediate practicality. Straight trees are cut down and used for construction. Beautiful timber is harvested for tools and furniture. But the twisted tree, with its irregular shape, is considered useless. Zhuangzi, however, replied differently. He said, "This tree may not be fit for construction, but it can stand in a vast open field. People can walk around it, rest in its shade, and enjoy the coolness it provides. Because no one cuts it down, This tree can live out its natural life in peace and freedom. The paradox here is profound. It is precisely because the tree is useless that it becomes most useful. Its uselessness saves its life, gives it longevity, and allows it to offer comfort, rest, and shade to those who pass by. This is the lesson Zhuangzi wanted us to see. If we live only by the measure of utility, we may end up cutting ourselves down, like the straight tree. But if we embrace the great use of uselessness, we discover a freedom beyond the world's utilitarian demands. In other words, what the world calls worthless may actually contain the greatest value. Let us return to Zhuangzi's insight about uselessness. The famous story of the crooked tree tells us that what seems useless may in fact preserve life and bring hidden value. Zhuangzi's friend, Huizi, once pointed at a large, twisted tree. He said, "This tree is worthless. Its trunk is bent, its branches are gnarled. You can't use it for lumber. Even carpenters won't look at it." But Zhuangzi smiled. He told Huizi that precisely because the tree was useless for construction, it would never be cut down. Instead, it could grow freely in the wilderness, offering shade for travelers, rest for the weary, and beauty for those who pass by. In a world obsessed with utility, the useless tree survives and becomes more valuable than all the others. This way of thinking was Zhuangzi's response to the chaos of his age. In his time, even keeping one's life intact and expressing one's thoughts was already a great achievement. The story exaggerates for the sake of clarity. It teaches us to break free from narrow utilitarian thinking and to transform our relationship with the world around us. Now, let me bring you forward in time to modern England. There was once a girl named Gillian Lynne. Today, she is known as the legendary choreographer behind Cats and the Phantom of the Opera. But as a child, Gillian struggled terribly in school. She couldn't sit still. She couldn't focus. Teachers believed she suffered from ADHD. Her mother, desperate, took her to see a specialist. The doctor observed Gillian carefully. Then, instead of giving her a diagnosis, he smiled and said, "Your daughter is not sick. She is a dancer." Those words changed her life. Gillian was sent to ballet school, later entering the Royal Ballet Academy, and eventually becoming one of the most brilliant dancers and choreographers of the century. Do you see the connection? Gillian was like Zhuangzi's crooked tree. Society, through the eyes of utility, had labeled her as broken. But the doctor saw her from a different angle. He saw the bigger picture, the true gift within her. Just like the parable of the blind men touching only parts of an elephant, most people judge without seeing the whole. Only a wise vision can recognize hidden greatness. This is why Zhuangzi's teaching is so profound. To understand the value of the useless is to step into his world of freedom. In his writings, he called this realm Xiao Yao Yu, the carefree wandering, a life unbound by narrow judgments, open to the vastness of existence. And he begins this magnificent journey with one of the most poetic images in all of Chinese philosophy, the story of the fish Kun transforming into the bird Peng. Zhuangzi writes, "In the Northern Ocean, there is a fish called Kun. No one knows how many thousands of miles long it is. One day, Kun transforms into a bird, Peng. When Peng spreads its wings, they are like clouds covering the sky. Rising with the winds, Peng soars for 90,000 miles into the heavens." Here, the fish Kun symbolizes limitation, confinement, the feeling of being stuck in the deep ocean. But when it transforms into Peng, the great bird, it breaks free into the infinite sky. This, my friend, is Zhuangzi's vision of ultimate freedom, transcending narrow definitions, breaking beyond the chains of utility, and entering the boundless space of the Tao. The word transformation here is extremely important. When human beings feel trapped, when they sense that they are not free, they must learn the art of transformation. Just as the fish can transform into a bird, so too can human beings discover a way to achieve their own freedom, reaching what we might call the spiritual evolution of the soul. But this is not something that happens overnight. It requires patience, perseverance, courage, and above all, a breakthrough in thought. And just like the fish in Zhuangzi's tale, it also requires the right timing, the great opportunity, the vast ocean. When the great bird Peng chooses to rise and fly southward, it does so because all the right conditions have gathered. In the same way, only when the right inner and outer conditions align can a person step into complete freedom. Now, psychological transformation, this change of mind, is not something others can do for us. It must be done by the individual themselves. Is it difficult? Perhaps. But at the same time, it is also easy. Once we change our belief system, Once we truly embrace the essence of the Tao, this transformation will naturally occur. And when that happens, we will be like the great bird Peng, stretching its wings and soaring high into the sky, finally reaching its true destination. Zhuangzi once said, "Life is but a dream, the world but dust, and all living beings are like fleeting shadows." When our hearts awaken to freedom, the world we perceive will no longer be the same. The scenery we once saw as heavy and oppressive will transform into something vast, boundless, and radiant. At that moment, we step into an entirely new world, one that is eternal, open, and filled with freedom. And with that, dear friends, we have come to the end of today's reflection on Zhuangzi's inner chapters. Thank you for walking with me on this journey into the realm of Taoist wisdom. If you have your own thoughts about Zhuangzi and his philosophy of freedom, I warmly invite you to share them. And if you found value in today's message, don't forget to pass it along to your friends and loved ones. Until next time, thank you for listening, and I'll see you again in the next episode.